Hey everyone, I'm the founder and teacher here at Earth and Star Spiritual Wellness Center. Today we are just purely doing meat and potatoes type of lesson. So you know that I like to break all of my lessons down, or at least do one lesson at a time, from 3 different elements. From our meat and potatoes, which is our learning, our lessons, our intake of information, our wisdom. And I also like to do ceremonies. So this could look like actual ceremonies, or it could look like meditations, journey work, things like that. And then the third thing I like to incorporate is the Eistethal, the music, the dance, the playfulness. I think those 3 things are super, super important in all spiritual practices. But today is not going to end in music. It's not going to end in doing something fun. It's not going to end in a meditation. We just have things to talk about. What I've been guided into, especially since we've touched on elements of all of this in our past videos, I've been guided specifically to only talk about sin and karma. Buckle up. Here we go. Sin and karma. We've started coming up with elements of this when we talked about the original sin being shame and the original woundings and things like that. And this has sparked a lot of questions from viewers. It sparked a lot of questions just in life in general. And of course, when those questions start to come up, the angels keep me awake all night and pour information in. And now the angels are over there like, I didn't keep you up all night. I just woke you up super early and kept you up late. Okay, so sin. Let's start there before we move into karma. What is sin? From my perspective, from everything that I've seen, from the way that I view energy, from my gift of being able to see everything very visually, sin is simply a heavy energy, an emotion of shame and guilt. It's a heaviness of shame and guilt. This is what we carry around. When we feel that we're carrying sin, we are carrying shame for something that happened, that either we did, that someone else did, that we perceived someone else doing. So empaths carry a lot of heaviness because they're carrying the guilt and the shame of all of the injustices of the world. Completely different topic. We'll get to empaths later. But for right now, let's just talk about what it personally means to you. Now, all of this guilt and shame, essentially what that is the thing that separates you from God, from your God self. We spoke before about how since we are all incarnated from source energy, we are a piece of source energy, holding all of source and all of what source energy is in this one body. We are the entire ocean in one drop, our body being the drop. Then we are God. We have God selves inside of us, inside of this body. But what separates us from that frequency, from that knowing, is the heavy, low vibrating frequencies, the heavy energy, the heavy emotions. And when we become separate from our God selves, this is hell. We are in hell when we are in a low vibrating state of heaviness, extreme guilt, shame, sin, and all of this stuff. I don't personally, we can get into personal beliefs. If I'm going to be your friendly neighborhood teacher, we can get into personal beliefs. If you believe something different, that's completely fine. But from how I view it, hell and heaven are right here on earth. It's all in your mind. Remember, your mind controls all things. It controls all experiences that we are having. Everything that we vibrate is what we experience in our outer lives. Everything that we are on the inside is what we manifest on the outside. So on the inside, if we're carrying all of that guilt and low emotions, that puts us in a state of suffering, a state of separation from our God selves, and then we tend to be in what we call hell on earth. This is where we are, hell. So me and my oldest son, we got into a conversation about this sort of thing because he believes slightly differently than I do, and that's fine. He's also 18. So we like to have these open conversations because a true teacher isn't one who simply says, yes, I accept all of your beliefs. I do accept all of your beliefs, and I believe all of our beliefs can mesh beautifully and we can unite through our beliefs. But a true teacher is also one who pushes your beliefs to keep you growing and changing. If the people you are looking to teach you and guide you are not pushing you into growth and change, if they're allowing you to become comfortable just as you are, just as you believe all the time, then they're no longer your teachers, they're your friends. If you want a teacher, they're going to push you. They're going to say things that you don't currently believe. They are going to make you grow and question your mindset so that you don't become stagnant. Because once you become stagnant, you are no longer growing. You are simply being comfortable where you are. And the whole point in low vibrating energy, the whole point in all of those parts is to keep us growing and moving. If we become too comfortable, we stop growing. But what he asked me, he said, okay, I get that. And hell is separation from God. He said, but what about people who don't feel guilt? What if there are people who don't feel guilt and shame, so they don't know that they are sinning? Great question. For Uriel. So we went to Uriel, and basically what I was told is that is impossible. It is impossible for someone to do something and have no emotional reaction whatsoever. We think about extreme situations such as sociopaths or psychopaths and how they do things without having an emotion attached to it as if it were a completely neutral act. But what I was told is that that's not completely accurate. We think of children. Let's go back to the children analogy again. Remember, original sin comes from a feeling of guilt and shame, which means that when a child does something that we perceive as wrong, that's not a sin because they are simply experimenting and experiencing their world. They don't yet know the consequences and the punishment of that action until after we teach them that. Usually repeatedly, because it takes repeated actions and consistency for them to understand the depth and intensity of what's happening, because it just doesn't click in their brain as to why. We can punish a child and they become sad and shameful, but most of the time it's not because of their action, it's because of the punishment. They just feel like, oh, now I'm a bad girl or I'm a bad boy now. They don't fully understand why their action was bad, what the effects of that action is, unless they experience the full action, unless they get to be the person to do the thing, to watch the thing play out and naturally experience those consequences. So that means that in life, as we go through life, sometimes when we're growing, when we're kids, when we're teenagers, when we're young adults, we can say harmful things to others when we are in a state of feeling less than, when we are in a state of anger, when we are in a state of feeling bullied, whatever it is, when we feel a certain way, we can project that onto other children, onto other teenagers, onto other young adults. Everyone has the capacity to do this if they don't learn or become self-aware. But essentially, we hurt other people. And in those moments, we may not feel guilty about it. And I'm going to tell you this, okay? When I was young, personal story, no judgment. When I was young, I think maybe first, second grade, remember by the age of first or second grade, we're developing our second chakra, our sacral space. Our root has already been established within our family. And then we're working on our sacral, which is our emotions, our relationships with others, team building. So we're really in the group think kind of mind, trying to understand how to fit into a group of people, how to feel safe and accepted and loved within a group of peers. And so this is where I was. Now, every day on the playground, we really liked to form this group and try to express our power. So we formed a group, we would stomp around the playground, and we were always in charge. All of us girls, we were the power force on the playground. So that meant that there was one particular boy that we liked to pick on and beat up. And one particular day, there was a girl, I don't know who she was. I remember her name to this day, though. Her name was Lisa. So Lisa, if you're watching this, this is for you. Her name was Lisa, but I didn't know her. I didn't know anything about her. But the leader of our group, I believe her name was Mel, she started picking on this girl for whatever reason. I don't know what happened. I don't know what brought it about, but I was just part of the group, and I picked on her too. Everyone was calling her a crybaby. So I called her a crybaby. I don't know why. And in that moment, there were zero negative emotions about that. Because in that moment, I was being part of the group. I was developing my sacral chakra the way that I needed to develop my sacral chakra, with acceptance from my group, with a sense of pride and power and safety. So that wasn't in itself wrong for me to experience. But that wasn't the full experience. So as time goes on, Lisa cried, obviously, from getting picked on. My parents get a phone call. I kind of maybe get in trouble about this. My stepmother at the time, she didn't really say much about it, but she had the sense that I got bullied a lot, before this. So she didn't really say much about me being on the opposite end of that all of a sudden. But years go by. I didn't feel bad about that thing. I didn't want to get in trouble, obviously, but I didn't feel bad about what I had done either. Until I got older. And I'm talking about this thing stuck in my brain. Like I said, this happened when I was 6. This happened like over 20 years ago. And, hold on. Over 30 years ago, this thing happened. But as time went on, it really stuck with me in my brain. And I would start to see things come up where I would watch other people who were bullied and who would cry about things and it was all about physical things, just about how their personality or how they looked. And that would really bother me a lot. I wanted to stand up for these people and advocate for those people. And I had my fair share of being bullied and bullying others. This was a cycle that went on all through the development of these 2 chakras here. But eventually, when I came out the other side, I had a passion for social justice. I had a passion for those who get picked on just for how they look or for their personality or for who they are. And so I came out of this with a very strong sense of what is right, what is kind, what is loving, and what I still owe to my community because of my injustices and my experiences. Now, without those experiences of being bullied and bullying others and watching how it affected them, without having that full experience, I would not know what was right or what was wrong. I had to feel that for myself. That wasn't something that could be punished out of me. That was something I had to experience the full circle of. But I didn't feel the emotion from it until later. I didn't understand the consequences of it until later. And so it's the same thing with everybody. What I was told is that it is actually impossible not to feel an emotion from doing something wrong, not to have an emotion from doing something that hurts others. A sin, so to speak. Anything that separates you from your God self, it is impossible not to feel an emotion from. If you don't feel emotion from it in the moment, you're going to feel it later through life. And if the only way that there's any way that you won't feel an emotion from it is if there's just something completely off in the brain space. Just the brain is just not clicking. And what I was told from the angel is that even in those experiences, those people are serving their purpose on this earth. They are creating something. They're causing things to happen here on earth. And the only way they would be able to do that is if they didn't have that loose screw. They didn't have that thing missing that was telling them this isn't loving or kind. But they will experience the emotions from that, the heaviness from that, the consequences from that, either through how their quality of life or in their next life when they are able to understand, and then they have a karmic cycle. We'll get into karma later. But it's impossible not to feel sin, this separation from God when we do things that make us feel separated from our God self. Now, when we talk about things that separate us from our God self, I would really like to put this in the context of the 10 Commandments, because this was another thing that my son brought up during this conversation. He said, I don't really believe in sin that way. I don't think that we can just do wrong things and suddenly we're just in hell, like an actual hell space. Because that's just the opposite of what love is. That's the opposite of God. So it's simply the separation. And then he brought up the 10 Commandments and what that means. So I'd really like to bring that into a spiritual aspect and really break that down and look at it for a second. You know what? I want to go backwards with the 10 Commandments. Let's start easy and then go hard, okay? Number 10, do not covet thy neighbor. So this is about jealousy, coveting what other people have. So bringing that into a spiritual and an energetic context, what this means is don't wish your life was different. Everyone's here on their path, living their purpose, doing what they do for their reasons, towards their highest growth, towards their highest destiny. So when you bring yourself into a space of coveting something that other people have, what you're doing is you're separating yourself from your love energy, from your gratefulness. So this is a sin because it separates you from your God self. We don't want to live in a state of suffering. We don't want to live in a state of not enough. We don't want to live in a state of everybody except me. We want to live in a state of gratefulness, and then that really causes abundance to overflow inside of us. So we're being grateful for our homes, for our families, for our jobs, for our vehicles, for our clothes. We're being thankful for our bodies, for every single thing that we are, because this is an expression of everything that we worked so hard for, not just in this life, but in our past lives. This is very unique and special to us. So let's be grateful in that. Number 9, essentially don't lie. Don't give false witness against your neighbors. Now, what this one does in a very spiritual and energetic sense is it creates shadow. Shadow! So for those of you who don't know, your shadow self is the part of you that you choose not to see or acknowledge. So a lot of people push their own negative habits, tendencies, and beliefs into the shadow and don't look at them. But this is also good stuff about ourselves, because some people don't believe that they're powerful, that they're worthy, that they're beautiful. And so they push that stuff into the shadow. Now, when we lie on somebody else, when we tell a lie in general, what is our intention for that? Think about your intention for lying. We either don't want to be judged, or we want to fit in, or we could be doing it maliciously because we want them to get in trouble because we're mad at them. But either way, a lie is being told out of some sort of low vibrating energy. It's being told out of fear of some sort. Fear. We don't want to be judged. We don't want to be separated from the group. We don't, whatever it is that you're wanting when you lie, it's from some sort of space of fear. Fear separates you from your God self. And it creates more shadow because when you speak, you have first had a thought. And when you speak something that is untrue, it's building up that energy because your mind is saying, oh, is it? Is that true? And this is how we get people who lie so much that they actually don't know what's true and what's not, because your mind believes what you tell it to believe. It just does. It believes what you tell it to believe. You will never have a more intimate connection with anything else on this earth plane than you do with your own body. You literally live inside of this body. So that means that anything that your mind thinks, your body really tries to create inside of itself. Your body tries to give you what you tell it you want and you are. Your body loves you. If I'm telling my body all of these negative things or wrong things, and this actually plays into a different one here too, then my body is going to try to recreate that for me. So I'm creating shadow. If I lie on another person because I'm actually fearful that I'll be seen, I'm pushing that thing that I'm fearful of into my shadow. I'm not looking at that thing about myself. I don't want other people to see this thing about myself, and I'm creating a bigger and bigger shadow. Shadow, we know, once healed and integrated, becomes a huge part of our power, because anything that we reject or deny about ourselves blocks us from being as powerful as we could be, blocks us from being our whole self, our whole essence. Okay, number 8, don't steal. In an energetic sense, this is an imbalance of power. You can steal without knowing you are stealing. Trust me. In a very physical sense, this might look like taking something that belongs to your neighbor, taking something that you just know from a shop, something that you know isn't yours. Now we know that there are consequences for that on the physical realm, just like punishment. So this is jail time, arresting, just like to a child, that punishment would be spanking. But we don't always learn, like I said, until we have the full experience, until we are actually stolen from, when something's been taken from us, and then we feel the imbalance of that energy inside of us. And this is the actual process and cycle and learning of not stealing. Essentially, when we steal, we are taking something that somebody else has paid for, has worked for, or has spent their energy creating. Any object that's out there, somebody has spent energy and time creating. And energy and time are so, so huge. Here in this dimension, this is pretty much what we have to work with as our exchange of worth a lot of the time in this dimensional space. That's why money is so important to us in our particular culture. Because to get money, we have to use our energy and our time to do something for others or to create an object worthy of selling. So what we've done is we have taken somebody's time and energy without giving our time and energy back. That means that you can steal from people by, anything. You can super steal. So I even had the thought this morning, because my parents are in Scotland right now, and my mom, she sent a picture of some pub glasses that she wants. And I was like, man, I remember when I was like 20 something and there was some pub glasses I wanted, and I just took them. I just put them in my bag. I just took them. The restaurant allots for that, right? Yeah, but it still sucks that the owner has to cover that cost. I'm a business owner now, and I know that when people come in and take my products or take products that belong to my consignment vendors, that they are actually stealing my money. They are taking something that I had to pay for, that I had to work hard for. They're taking my time, energy, and money. They're just taking from me. Now, stealing could also mean reaching out to others and taking for your own emotional comfort what they don't have to readily offer or give. Anything that creates an imbalance of energy, even somebody working for you without you paying them, without you giving something back in return, letting someone do any kind of work on you without you doing something in return or giving back to them. This creates an imbalance of energy. Reciprocity is so important. Giving back is so, so, so important. and we steal from the earth all the time. All the time we steal from Mother Earth. Sorry, I yelled. I'll do it again though, probably. It's not just about humans. It's about nature. It's about the animals. It's about everything. Nature, the earth, she provides for us so beautifully. She grows fruit without us asking. She gives us all of these things to make clothes and to make homes. And what do we give back? Jack shit. Okay, so this doesn't always have to be something physical. It's really good if it's physical. So if you chop a tree down, plant another one. Those sorts of things are really, really good for balance. But a lot of the time, this is just about giving love to the earth. We can give emotions and time and energy to the earth without having to give money or physical things. So this might look like you getting to sit with the earth, spend time in nature, pour out your love. They've already done studies that if you sit with a plant and tell it positive things, that it seems to grow and flourish more beautifully, more openly, more abundantly. So what makes us think that the earth itself is not the same way? If we sit and send love to the earth and give earth and the plants and the animals our time and our focus and our intention, then that makes the earth more peaceful and more abundant and more loving. Instead, what we do is we go out, we chop down all of these trees, and then we sell the wood. And then the balance becomes where some other human is paying this human for the wood. That's their balance. But where's the balance from the wood itself, from the person who took the wood from the earth? We have to give back. If you cut down a tree, plant another one. Spend time in nature. If you want to eat an orange off of a tree, make sure you touch that branch and say thank you and give it love and gratefulness energy. We're not just talking about paying someone for ingredients. We're talking about thanking the earth for creating those ingredients. This is a balance and a reciprocity throughout all things. And if we don't do this, we are stealing from the earth. You can steal from yourself as well whenever you give more than what you are getting back. When you give something that you don't even have to give anymore because you're running on empty. Stop stealing from yourself. It is separating you from your God self, and it is creating lack in your life. I'm getting off that soapbox because we don't have time for only that. Okay, number 7, don't commit adultery. Taking that into a spiritual aspect, don't break your word and don't betray. Betrayal is so, so huge. So, so huge. So, we betray others by letting them think one thing or telling them something, but really actually meaning something else. And this could be very, very big, such as actually the act of committing adultery, which we know can be done not just through having sex with another person when you're married. That's a very obvious way to put that just because of the vows that we make during the wedding ceremony. But there are some people who have open marriages and open relationships, and that doesn't feel like a betrayal to them. So then what is adultery? It's simply a betrayal. So it's not always about the actual sex act or something like that. A betrayal could be anything. A betrayal could be anything that makes your partner or the person who you've promised to protect feel unsafe, feel unprotected. And sometimes this isn't actually a thing that you've really even done. It's just something that they feel inside because of their wounds and their unsafe spaces. So when you move forward, what you really want to do is watch your intentions. Make sure that when you tell somebody something, that it's from a pure intention space. When we tell people things, we want it to be what we actually mean. So if someone comes up and says, hey, is it okay if I do this and this? We don't want to say, yeah, whatever, because that's what they want. So obviously they must want to do it. We've just created betrayal in ourselves. What we want to say is exactly what we mean. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that. Can we discuss this further? What does this mean? We want to really make sure that we are not creating the space for other people to betray us. And if we allow certain things over and over and over again, we become the ones betraying ourselves because we're the ones not stopping that or not creating the change to separate ourselves from that. Self-betrayal is actually the biggest thing that I see here. I work with a lot of people on deep, vulnerable, open emotional things. And betrayals from other people are super obvious, especially when we have essays, childhood abuse, things like that, because these are betrayals from people who were supposed to raise us, people who were supposed to protect us and keep us safe and teach us what loving relationships look like. But as we get older and we dig back into those places, we realize that what's in our subconscious is self-betrayal, because when those things happen to us, we rejected ourselves. We felt like we weren't worthy. We felt like we were uninnocent and dirty. We felt this shame that was there, and we kept allowing it to happen. It's that self-betrayal. We kept putting ourselves in certain situations. We kept doing this. We kept doing that. And self-blame is so huge in things like this, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be, but it is. Your subconscious will always blame yourself first. Even if on the surface you are blaming other people, deep in your subconscious mind, you're blaming yourself for all of these things. So, betrayal. Betrayal causes a definite separation between you and your God self. Let's move into number 6. Don't murder. Some people say kill, but I think most texts actually mean don't murder. So that implies that there's a difference between killing and murdering someone. And what would that difference be? Malicious intent. So, we kill because we are part of nature. We are part of a cycle. All of nature kills, it tears down, it destroys so that it can be rebirthed. We already know this. And animals kill other animals to eat. Humans kill animals to eat. Humans kill plants to eat. So if you're vegan, don't act like you're better than everyone else. You kill plants to eat. It's just a natural life cycle here happening. But with this particular sin or this commandment, we are talking about murder, the malicious intent to take life because of our fear, anger, or insecurity, because of our personal needs, a malicious intent. So a lot of the time, this does not include self-defense, but war. What does war look like? I think that a lot of the time people don't necessarily include individual soldiers into this because they are taking orders. And most of the time when you're at war, somebody has threatened somebody else, and so then it becomes a matter of self-defense. Do you have a malicious intent and pre-thought out plan to kill somebody, to take life from the planet? Now, because of the way I believe, I don't always think that this has a positive or negative charge. Our perception of it gives it a positive or negative charge. All energy and acts are neutral. Simply how we perceive them is what makes them good or bad. So when we're looking at the taking of life in general, life is a cycle. And sometimes it has to be taken so it can be continued, so that people can have certain experiences of what it means to die or to be taken, while other people have the experience of what it feels like to take life, so that this cycle keeps going and we understand the consequences of that. We want all of our intentions to be pure, which is why we quite often are filled with shame or guilt. Even these soldiers, when they come home from war, even though they're defending something that they believe is very loyal and beautiful, they're defending their country, they're making sure that their family is safe, and that's a very noble thing to do as you go out there. But then they come back and they are not right. They are separated from their God self. They are separated from their hearts. They are traumatized because of how much malicious intent is actually out there, because they are out there in the darkness, in the depths. And even when we accidentally kill in self-defense, this still quite often will instill a sense of shame and guilt into somebody, creating separation from the God self. So even though some death is necessary for life to continue, it's the guilt of it that separates you from your God self. Remember that part. There are some people who can't kill animals in order to eat, so they go somewhere else and just buy it already dead. It's just the heaviness. It's the heaviness that causes all of this stuff. Let's not dig deeper into that. Just remember, it's malicious intent that creates this particular commandment, but from a spiritual level, it's just the death feels like the opposite of the life, which creates a separation from the God self. Let's see, number 5, honor your parents, your father and your mother. I would venture to say there are a lot of parents out there who, God bless their little children, their children are not safe until they get away from their parents. I'll say it again if you ask me to. So we're talking about narcissistic parents, abusive parents. This just purely on a commandment scale, a physical scale, it can't be measured. This is something you're going to have to take into the spiritual to be able to see how it causes sin or separation. Honoring your parents, to me, looks like honoring your inner feminine and masculine, honoring your cosmic mother and your cosmic father, understanding the roles and the cycles within yourself and keeping them sacred. Honor, that means to pay attention to them, to love them, to pay reverence to them. And I pay reference to my feminine self and to my masculine self. On an ancestral level, I do honor my parents, the things that they've gone through. It doesn't mean that I have to super agree with them, with their beliefs, or fall in line with them in their beliefs, or do everything that they say. In fact, some of you have to be very separate from your parents in order to live any sort of a peaceful life or to be an independent person. But I still honor their role in my life, because I wouldn't be who I am without having to go through those experiences. I wouldn't have some of the traumas that I've had. Same for you. But at the same time, those were the things that pushed us into our growth and expansion and brought us to our spiritual path, ultimately led us to our discovery of self. So we just always want to honor that and honor our inner masculine and feminine. We've talked a good bit in past videos about masculine and feminine, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time there, but if you have any extra questions, just let me know. Number 4, honor the Sabbath to keep it holy. To me, we're bringing all of this in a spiritual sense. To me, the Sabbath just represents your rest cycles. In one of our last videos, we talked about periods and cycles and how we go through periods of rest and how we go through periods of creation, periods of death and receiving, and then periods of putting out, nurturing others, growing, rebirths. We go through all of these cycles and they all need to be honored. We cannot keep pushing through and pushing through and pushing through indefinitely forever without taking breaks, rest periods, vacations, playtime. Those things are so super important to us. And if we keep pushing in that way without play, without rest, without honoring ourselves, that creates separation from our God self, because we're not honoring all of who we are and all of what we need. It creates a heaviness and a seriousness that disconnects us from the earth. If you think about workaholics, they tend to have like a certain personality where they tend to be very serious, very logical. Things tend to come down to a balanced scale of worth. Well, if I give this, is it worth this to me? And it really gets them out of their love space. But then you can see people who are very in their play space, who work, who are very balanced with that. They go to work and then they play and they have fun and they sing and they dance and they go to nature. And it just seems so loving and light and fun. And that lightness is a side effect of being in connection with your God self. So if you are a workaholic, I'm a Capricorn moon, I get it. If you're a workaholic, just go spend more time in nature so you can connect back in with your God self. Now let's see, number 3, do not take the Lord's name in vain. Negative self-talk. Hands down, that's what this is. If I am my God self, then everything that I'm saying against my God self is negative self-talk. So telling myself that I am not worthy, that I am not capable, that I am not beautiful, that I am not strong, that I am not deserving of people's time or space, anything that I tell myself that is negative is taking thy name in vain and therefore creating separation from my God self. That's plain and simple. I'm not going to debate that or like really super explain it. That's plain and simple. Your negative self-talk is a sin that's separating you from your God self. Okay, number 2, don't worship idols. Let's see. Bringing this into a spiritual sense. Let's first look at worship, what worship actually means. The word worship means reverence and adoration for or to honor. Therefore, we honor everything that's on earth. So in one aspect, I believe that any God that's worshiped is not an idol because it's all an expression of source energy. Remember, we talked about how all archetypes, all gods, all goddesses, all of these are simply frequencies and energies of the source. They are simply aspects of source. So, we can have, like Neptune in one religion could be some other water god in another religion, but they're all like the same frequency, the same archetypal type of frequency. So anything that you worship or that you choose to worship is an aspect of the whole, is an aspect of source energy, is an aspect of God. So, therefore, they're not idols. What are idols are when we choose to focus, honor, adore, and revere things that are not of the God self. So, when we are focusing and bringing reverence to only certain aspects, so only if we close our belief systems around worshiping only the body or worshiping only food, only things like this, because these are the things that we adore, these are the things that we super love and that we bring reverence to and we focus on, then these things might be separating us from our God self. Objects. We've got a lot of hoarders out there, okay? And we know that these hoarders, it comes from a space of lack of safety, lack of abundance, things like that, abandonment. So we just fill our space with things that either feel good to us, make us feel safe, or just make us feel like we have things. But what we're doing is we're focusing our energy, we're bringing adoration to objects, things that don't actually mean anything to our God self. It's not part of our God self. It's not love, it's not gratefulness, it's not joy, it's not beauty, it's not abundance. They are physical things. So this is kind of what that's going into on a spiritual level. And on a spiritual level, any particular deity or God that is only worshipped to the exclusion of all else, I believe separates us from our God self. Bear with me here. Bear with me. So, if everything is source energy, if everything is one, if everything is unity, then that means there is one, what you would call God. Everything is one. This is spirit, this is source, whatever you call it, this is the unity of all things. Everything that created itself outside of that, or that broke out of the source, that means me, that means you, all these archetypal gods, goddesses, and energies are all part of the source, which is why it's not wrong to worship any of them, because you're still worshiping an aspect of God. What's wrong is when you take that one form, the one thing that you worship, and only look at that thing and say everything else is wrong. That is what's actually separating you from your God self, because you are rejecting that God is all things. You are rejecting the idea that somebody else could see the same thing you are from a different perspective. I told you, we're going backwards for a reason. Okay, number 1. Have no other gods before me. And this is essentially everything that I just said. Source energy, spirit, this is your true self, your true essence. And therefore, anything outside of this, anything outside of you, choosing everything that's not you, choosing anything that's just not what God's self is, that's not what love is, that's not what your energy is just self-rejection. Self-rejection is the number one thing that separates you from your God self energy. We're running out of time, so we gotta move on with this. Okay, so all of that was sin, okay? So sin, just to recap, is simply an emotion of shame that separates you from your God self. And we use the 10 Commandments as just different ways of seeing how we do that in day-to-day life, how we separate ourselves from our God self. The separation from your God self becomes what we say hell on earth, whereas connection to your God self, which has side effects of love, gratefulness, bliss, joy, this is heaven on earth when we are in connection with our God self. So now moving that over into karma and what karma is. Now I will say that I have worked with a yogi, so I understand that karma to certain cultures and religions is the core key piece of their religion. So I'm not speaking from a space of religion. I'm not speaking on that. I'm speaking on karma the same way I'm speaking on sin. I'm seeing it exactly how it was shown to me by my guidance, by my angels, just how I see it in time, because I'm very visual over working with different people. Karma essentially is an energy frequency that affects your life circumstances and experiences. Karma is not a punishment. Sorry, guys. All of you guys that say karma's a bitch, just wait till it comes back around. It's not real that way. From my perspective, it's just not real that way. But it does come back around because what we talked about full life experiences. So those who are bullied become the bully, become the advocate. Full life experiences. What this means is that karma is a very neutral energy. And the reason that we incarnate across so many different lifespans is that we're here to experience every single thing that life has to offer. We're here to experience every single aspect of who we are, the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful. We're here to experience all of it, which means that in some lives we will be the murderer. In some lives we will be the person murdered. In some lives we will be the rescuer, the EMS person. In some lives we will be the mother who lost that child. In some lives we will be the child who lost that parent. We're going to experience all aspects of that death. And in all of our lives we are going to experience death. There is a natural end to everything. There's a natural end to your relationships, to your jobs. Everything that you've built on your sturdy foundations, you've built with your full ethics, your full awareness, your full intention. You've built it strong, you've built it beautiful, you've watched it grow. Even that one day will end and be torn down so that you can continue growing into the new thing. Everything's always going to cycle. And karma is simply the energy that keeps us moving and having the different experiences. Karma is simply the word for I've experienced this in the past, so now I will experience this. I have been this person in the past, so in this life I'm going to be this person. And over time, we accumulate all of these experiences, and when we have experienced everything that there is to experience, we have purified our karma, and we get to enter back in with source energy. This is how I see karma. So I don't believe that it's a punishment. I don't believe that we should suffer in it. And I believe that it also affects all timelines across all dimensions. Oh, we're getting into such deep things and we don't have much time left. Stay with me, let's make more time. All we have is time in this dimension. Okay, dimensional frequencies in space, multiple timelines. In this mandala effects, oh my God, okay. In this lane that you're in, you've made it to this space because of all of the free will choices that you've made in your life to get here. Across different dimensional frequency timelines, every single choice you could have possibly ever made, those timelines exist all at once, parallel to the one you're already living. So that means that before you incarnated, you have compensated for any free will decision you could have possibly ever made. You know all the outcomes of all of your lives, and you live them all simultaneously. Free will. Some people, when we're looking at karma, get a little hung up because it's taught in karma that you incarnate with a certain purpose or destiny. This is the thing you're going to live, and nothing you do, none of your choices matter because you're going to end up at this point at your death anyways. And sometimes people don't like that thought because it kind of takes their control away. It makes them feel like their choices don't matter and their ability to flow is limited because of this. But in reality, this is not a bad thing. This is a good thing. This should relieve you that you're not constantly having to think and to suffer and to worry because you're gonna make it. No matter what happens in this life, you're gonna make it. You're gonna make it to the place that you preordained for yourself before your incarnation to make. And all of your free will choices have simply created multiple timelines that you're experiencing all of right now. You could have chosen this over that. You could have chosen this road and that road. And you did in other frequencies and other dimensional spaces. But in this one, you're going to reach that end point. So the only thing that's keeping you from making bad choices is your ability to have heaven on earth. Karma is a very neutral energy, whereas what we want is heaven on earth, connection with our God self so that we can be in joy, peace, love, and gratefulness while we live out this karmic space. This is the karmic experience that you chose. And while we're in it, we're going to choose to be connected, to be in love, to be in bliss, to be in heaven on earth in our minds and in our emotions. So this also means that I don't believe that ripples super exist. I don't believe that this person incarnated and now they're doing this thing. Oh, and that's the wrong thing for them to do. So it created a karmic ripple across all of time and space, and now everything is screwed up. I don't believe that. Everything that you could have ever chosen has been accounted for, and you're living it simultaneously to now. Karma is a very neutral experience. So your ability to be connected and in your heaven space while you're living out this cycle and having all of the experiences that you're having is completely up to you. It's completely what it was meant to be, what you decided it was meant to be before your incarnation. And your choices matter because you get to flow, because you get to be in heaven. You get to not suffer. You get to experience all of these timelines all at once. You get to experience everything. And that's so, so beautiful. There's a lot more. I could go with all of this, but I think that for one meat and potato meal, this was a lot of information. So if you have any other thoughts, questions, particular parts that you'd like to dig deeper into and pull apart, just let me know. And until then, just remember to be connected to your love self, to your God self, to love yourself, to thank yourself, and we'll talk soon.